24, the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. We're broadcast live on local cable channel 8 and 1072. We stream live on the Town of Mashpee website, www.mashpeema.gov/channel8. It is 6:30, and we'll convene in open session, and we'll start with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I'd like to have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. We will start with the minutes. Approval of the following Monday, December 2nd, 2024, regular session minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
And myself as a yes. At 6:35, would you read the public hearing?
Is it 6:35?
It's 6:32.
Okay.
You can read it.
Pursuant to Chapter 138, Section 16A of Massachusetts General Laws, the Select Board, acting as the local licensing authority, will hold a public hearing on the 2025 annual alcoholic beverages and entertainment license renewals for the town of Mashpee. Said hearing will be held on Monday, December 16th, 2024, at 6:35 p.m. in the Wacoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. You may submit comments and questions via email to selectboard@mashpeema.gov prior to the meeting date and time.
Thank you, Michaela. Do we have somebody here from Andy's Market? Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
State your name.
My name's Louis Farwell.
Good evening.
Hi, and your name?
Stephen Kayer.
Hi. And this is for?
This is for an alteration of premises.
Okay. And you work there?
Yes.
Manager?
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's right here, 6:35. Okay, good. Does anyone have any questions for the board? This is just because you've enlarged the building.
Correct.
Right.
There's no other changes in the application as far as hours or nothing like that, right?
Nope.
Okay.
David, any questions?
No issues with the butters or anything? Nope.
You sent out all the,
Yes, we did.
that you were required to do. Michaela?
I just have a quick question, just for transparency. How much is it enlarged? What's the percentage larger?
It was an addition of 1,800 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
so it's roughly 18%.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the audience on the Andy's Market? Okay. I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And you're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Oh, now we need to vote.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Okay. We have a few minutes before our next hearing. Do we have something I can do real quick? Number 8.
Certified.
we can certify our fire chief. Yes, I will. We're going to jump because we have a 6:40 hearing, so we're going to jump down to number 4, certify and confirmation of the hiring of our fire chief.
Motion to approve.
Oh, wait a minute, he has to come up first.
Oh, all right.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are we tonight?
Very good.
That's good. Any questions on the hiring process? No?
Motion to approve the appointment of Joseph Peltier as a fire chief.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. And this
John?
to certify in the hiring
The
process.
hiring
Confirm
process.
and certify.
Yes.
Confirm and certify.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Looking
Welcome.
forward to negotiating with the town manager.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Can,
We might now get some extra
we
space
can
back.
also jump down to number 8, certification of hiring process for 3 entry-level police officers, Michael Pendoloff, Christopher Hutton, and William Balder. Are they here? They didn't have
This
to
is
be
just
here.
the certification, not to be confused with confirmation and certification. And this is to attest that all policies and procedures were followed for the town of Mashpee.
All right. I motion to certify the hiring process.
Second.
John?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. And discussion of recommendation for appointment to the Mashpee Inclusion and Diversity Committee, Mohammed Zazal, I don't know, saying this right?
Zazov?
Zelazov. Thank you, David. Member at large. Is Mohammed in? Yes. Oh, come on up. We like to meet people. How are you?
How are you?
State your name
Mohammed Zevzaf,
and where do you live?
31 Shipswell Drive, Mashpee.
Nice to have you here. And you want to be on the
Mashpee Inclusion and Diversity.
Diversity Committee.
That is correct.
Okay, that was number 8. Anyone have any questions? David?
I do not.
John?
No, just, how long have you lived in town?
Maybe 27 years now.
Okay.
And we have your recommendation.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, Michaela?
Yep, the recommendations are sterling and will be a great addition.
Well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you. I need a motion.
Motion to
Motion.
approve?
Second?
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You have to go into the town clerk's office and sign in. No, no, when she's there. No, we won't do that to you tonight. Okay, we can start with the next public hearing, if you would.
Pursuant to Chapter 138, Section 16A of Massachusetts General Laws, the Select Board, acting as the local licensing authority, will hold a public hearing on the 2025 annual alcoholic beverages and entertainment license renewals for the town of Mashpee. Said hearing will be held on Monday, December 16, 2024, at 6:40 p.m. in the Wacoit Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. You may submit comments and questions via email to selectboard@mashpeema.gov prior to the meeting date and time.
Thank you. Wayne, they all look fine? Everybody's got approval on everything?
Yes.
Okay.
How do you want to do, you want to do them individually or bundle them
Well, I would just,
relative to the restaurant
probably
and
in
then the
groups.
restaurant wine and malt
Right,
Yeah.
I think
As
you
they're
bundled them
Yes.
previously.
in the
you
past?
start
yeah.
with the package store all alcohol.
And I would just read each one off and then bundle them together. I think that's what you did last time.
First of all, does anybody have any questions?
Nope, I didn't.
Does anyone from the audience? It's a public hearing on the renewal of the liquor licenses. No? So we can close the public hearing and then vote?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor? John?
Yes,
David?
Yes.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And now we can start with the voting. Package store, all alcohol. Andy's Market, The Barn, Best Buy Beverages, Inc., Liberty Liquors, and South Cape Wine and Spirits.
so moved.
Second.
John?
Yes,
David?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
And Tom?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Package store, wine and malt. Mashpee Country Store, Mashpee Mart, Mashpee Mini Mart.
and
Motion to approve?
and
Second.
Garrett's. Garrett's on the next page.
Oh, yeah.
Garrett's.
Oh, and Garrett's, I'm sorry. Okay, Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And John?
Yes,
And I'm a yes. Restaurant, all alcohol. Asia, Blue, Bobby Burns, Cafe Trivi, Cape Cod Coffee, Estia, Finally Dino's, Sage Hibachi, The Lanes, Magna Inc., Cape Cod Coffee Evergreen Circle, 99 Restaurant, Sienna, Sopranos, Valley Grill, Wicked, Wildfire Pizza.
so moved.
Approve.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes, should it be motion to approve?
That was,
Contingent upon the health department's approval of Wicked.
Thank you. As amended. John?
yes,
David?
Yes.
And you were yes?
Yes.
And yes, and I'm a yes. Restaurant, Wine and Malt, Bangkok Thai Cuisine, Steeple Street Music Academy, UVA, and Zoe's.
so
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Tom?
Second.
Yes.
Yes.
Michaela? David?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
And I'm a yes. Commercial Club, all alcohol, New Seabury Country Club, Willow Bend Country Club.
So
Motion
moved.
to approve. Second.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
yes,
And I'm a yes. Former Brewing Pouring, Malt Only, Knockabout Beer Company.
Motion to approve.
Second.
second.
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
And I'm a yes. So we're all set? Yes. Six 45, got 2 minutes. Public hearing, private to public road conversion, Blue Castle Drive. You want to read the public hearing? Yep.
I can get it out of here, I will. Pursuant to Town of Mashpee General Bylaw, Section 156D, the Select Board will conduct a public hearing on Monday, December 16th, 2024, at 6:45 PM to address the private to public conversion of Blue Castle Drive in Mashpee, Mass., as shown on the plans entitled Road Taking Plan Blue Castle Drive, dated November 15, 2024, and prepared by Cape and Islands Engineering. Said hearing will take place in the Wacoit Meeting Room at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Mass. 02649. Copies of the plans may be viewed in the office of the Town Manager and Select Board at Mashpee Town Hall. Broadcast live on local cable Channel 8 and 1072, stream live on the Town of Mashpee's website, https://www.mashpeema.gov/channel8. You can submit comments and questions via email to selectboard@mashpeema.gov prior to the meeting date and time.
Okay. Catherine, do you want to, go over the cost?
I don't have the breakdown per
Oh,
property. That's
okay.
something your office.
This is just the start.
Yeah, so this is the second step in the process. So the initial town meeting approval was approved, and funding was voted to prepare the plans and estimate for the cost. So this step is the public hearing where abutters can ask questions about the cost of the project, as they will be bearing that cost. If they agree to proceed with the road conversion, it would require signature of a second petition by the majority of the property owners on Blue Castle Drive, and that would go to the next available public hearing. If they submit by the second Monday in February, it would be on for the May 2025
Town
town
meeting.
meeting.
Okay. Anyone in the audience have questions about Blue Castle Drive? No? I guess we can.
Someone
We
is,
do.
Ernie's coming up.
Ernie? Good evening.
Good evening. Ernie Virgilio, 7 Blue Castle Drive. I'm here for a couple of reasons. I don't think this is ready at all for you to do anything tonight, in my opinion. Because we have questions. And the one big question we've got is, how was a town road or a town design area in the middle of a road? Not the beginning of the road, not the end of the road. The developer was allowed to build in the middle of the road, neglecting all the people on each end of the road. How did that happen? How can that be? That's a standard, that's approved, is that approved by town council? Well, how is it approved? As a matter of fact, during the times that was going through, I understand it, the chairman of the planning board basically stated, I believe, maybe not stated, but said, it should be the whole road. I mean, she's here tonight. If I'm dead wrong, I'm dead wrong, but that's the way I understood it. But yet they built the road, allowed to build the road in the middle of the road? Who determined that? How was that determined? Who on the planning board? Was it the planner? Was it the planning board? Was it the lawyer? Who was it that determined you could build a road in the middle of a road, neglecting everybody else on the road? A little bit of discrimination there. So that's my problem. And
Well-
I do not feel in any way, form, or matter you are ready for this tonight at all.
All we've gotten tonight, Ernie, is the cost of what it will,
Fine, we just got it too.
okay.
We just got the cost. You want to get into that? I'll get into that.
Well, what
Looking at
happens
us,
is
wait a
we
minute.
get
No,
the
no, no.
breakdown.
Okay, let's talk about the cost, $10,000. That's what it's going to cost us. During the time that we put up with the most disgusting construction project I've ever seen in my life, I had a big swimming pool in my front yard, which went in my garage and down my cellar steps until I went to the planning board, and they were very nice. They've treated me very well. I said, I need to correct this problem. And I know I can correct it. Please let me correct it. And I wrote it up for them, and they did. They allowed me to correct it. They had the meeting, and they allowed it. I stopped the water from coming in my yard into a proper drainage area. I stopped the water from going in my garage and down my cellar for $7,000. So now I'm going to spend $17,000 I have nothing else to say.
Hello. State your name.
Tatiana, 30 Blue Castle Drive.
Okay.
So I think you guys have noticed that as a resident of 30 Blue Castle Drive, on the street, outside, we're not part of the development, and most of us are against the building of this road. We're against it being taken over and becoming public. So I just think that there should be something more than a petition. We'd like to have some kind of discussion, something else where we can prevent this from happening. Is that something that's a possibility? How do we address that? 'Cause there's a lot of
Catherine?
people who feel very strongly about what's
Yeah,
happening.
and I have to agree. I have to agree.
So this was initiated by the majority of the residents on Blue Castle Drive. So the process is you can elect not to sign the petition. If it is approved by the majority and submitted, then you would have the opportunity to speak at town meeting in opposition.
Okay. So with the majority, I think the number was 26 properties, correct? The developers, the petition was started by the residents of the new development. They have 14. It seems a little bit off that the development has a majority of the vote automatically.
Unfortunately, that's the process. Everyone would be sharing equally in the cost. So even those properties that were part of the Carriage Road development would be paying the same cost for improvement of Blue Castle Road. So everyone would be sharing equally if this were approved. But again, this is in the hands of the property owners on Blue Castle Drive.
The developer has nothing to do with it anymore?
At this point, the planning board has released the covenant and any funds that they're holding for improvement of Carriageway, and that portion of Blue Castle that was subject to the planning board decision. So that's why the project is now moving forward through this process. There was we were waiting for the release of that security by the planning board. That has been released, so.
So that's part of the money that goes towards
No.
this? No?
So in the opinion of the planning board, the developer complied with all of the conditions that were required of him. So that's separate from this petition that is before the board and the property owners today.
And if this does go forward, what about the chance that it affects some property owners more than others? For example, the part of the street that the development is on is already paved, it's already done, it's already made up. Our end is not paved, and it is very likely, or I'm hypothesizing, I'm sorry, very likely that it would require the road to be expanded. So I would lose some of my front yard and property. How will that be accounted for?
So again, the petition at the request of the majority of the property owners is to bring the road up to the town standards. So we would be reconstructing that portion of the road within the existing right-of-way. So it is a 40-foot right-of-way for the road we would be working within, not on the individual properties.
Okay.
Now, Catherine, would it come all the way down to where Ernie's house is?
So it's the entire length of Blue Castle, so starting at Great Neck Road South, all the way to the end of the existing layout on Blue Castle. So that was the petition that was made before town meeting.
Thank you.
So, Catherine, so just trying to understand this, so it's the entire road of Blue Castle?
Correct.
So it's all residents, there's 26 residents on Blue Castle?
Correct.
And this is, the roadway suggestion or request is for the entire road?
Correct.
And-
As mentioned, some portions have already been improved as a condition of the planning board subdivision approval for Carriage Road. So this would improve those other sections. But everyone, all 26 property owners would share equally in the cost.
So if they don't presently have a road, I'm assuming it would cost more for them to add a road to that as opposed to just resurface the existing road?
So the project includes, again, the subdivision, as was alluded to, only improved specific portions of Blue Castle. So immediately at the intersection with Great Neck Road South, that was improved as part of the subdivision. And then there's a gap between that point and where it was developed for Carriage Road. So that would be reconstructed. And then beyond Carriage Road would be reconstructed. The road in that location actually is not within the layout, so we would be shifting the road to the actual layout for Blue Castle.
Wow.
I don't know. For me, I was actually, this is one of the first projects that came before us when I first got on the planning board. And I do remember this project had some problems going through. The project changed owners midstream of the development. Several of the residents had issues with the various developers that were involved. And I have to side with the residents that are here tonight that, you know, I think our process lacks the foresight. If this is a new development that has initiated this and, you know, one phase, this most recent phase of the development in that area has created a majority, and now everybody else has to bear the burden of this. Why isn't the developer bearing the brunt of this cost? Is the road actually built out currently? What's there now? Is it built out to our right-of-way width? You know, a 22-foot lane and room for some of the drainage and some of the other things that go in regular town roadway layouts? I mean, this is a hefty price tag, and I'd be upset if somebody moved into my backyard and then dictated that I got to come up with 10 grand. I can see where it's a recent development. You know, this has only been built in, what, the past 7 years, 8 years? So our process lacks foresight. And if this was originally an intention of the developers when they were coming in, they should have written this into their cost analysis.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, again, so this was a private road that was before the planning board for development of the new road, Carriage Road, as well as some lots on Blue Castle Drive. The recommendation from staff was to improve all of Blue Castle Way. But the planning board's decision was just to require those isolated improvements on the road. So the developer has complied with the conditions of his approval.
I guess what I'm looking for is parity between when we approve residential developments and the roadway layouts within them. We should have the mindset that this may become a town roadway taking, and to avoid the cost of putting this on residents that have been there or may have lived there prior to the development expansion, then there should be parity between what we approve for a private development and a town roadway, I think, is what I'm looking for.
And perhaps I'm not understanding, so the bulk of the costs associated with this conversion are to improve those sections of the road that were not improved by the developer. So the improvements that were made as part of the Aquay Heights subdivision, we are not proposing additional improvements. Those comply with our requirements. The improvements that are part of the approximately $10,000 per property cost is to improve those other section of the road that were not subject to the improvement by the developer.
And it still costs that much.
Yes.
I'm looking at $70,000 for drainage. that seems like that should have been factored in.
There's no, again, those sections of the road that were not part of the planning board's decision don't have any existing drainage. So we're basically rebuilding those sections of the road. And as mentioned, beyond Carriage Road, where we're having to move the road into the right-of-way, it's a complete reconstruction with drainage.
So that's where you lost me. So that part of you mentioned about Carriage Way or Carriage Road, so that's a road that was recently built,
Correct.
but you said it was not built to standard?
It was built to standard, but Blue Castle Drive beyond Carriage Road was an existing dirt road that, if you look at the plan, is outside of the road layout. So we're, as part of this estimate, we're shifting the road to the layout, basically reconstructing the road. It right now is a dirt gravel road. And it would become as part of the town's requirements, it would become a paved road.
So the majority of these costs are to actually improve and pave the unpaved present.
That portion,
Properties.
as well as the portion between Ernie's property and the development associated with Aquay Heights subdivision.
I can remember Ernie's property when they were doing the work. He ended up with the swimming pool in the front. You couldn't go down that road.
Right. Yeah. So again, that was a private road. It didn't involve
Right.
the DPW at that time.
Right.
So that was something that was,
The developer
agreed to by the developer and
Caused
the planning board.
problem, yeah.
Sorry, one more comment, just to kind of simplify things. Those of us who live on the dirt portion of the private road, we want to keep it the way it is, as a dirt portion
You
of the
don't
private road.
want it to go.
We do not. We do not want town improvements. We don't want town takeovers. We are very happy where we are. Thank you.
And how far does Blue Castle go up?
It looks like the portion we're talking about is almost 40%
Yeah.
of the project, based on the map. Or more than that, or maybe 20%.
Mary Wagan, I'm the chair of the planning board. This subdivision was a unique subdivision because it surrounded or bisected an existing neighborhood that had a dirt road. And yes, the dirt road was not built out where it should have been on the paper map, right? So when we asked for improvements on the road, things had to shift, and front yards were changed. So after things were built, et cetera, we still sent the planning board's engineer out to help fix some of these drainage problems that you heard. I do want to thank Catherine for remembering that, or reporting that when this subdivision came about, there were already houses there, right along this dirt road. The staff recommendation was to improve the whole road, and that was something that the planning board was pushing for mitigation from the developer. We wanted that to be part of the plan. But as that lady just said, there were people on the dirt portion of the road that was not going to get improved and paved that didn't want that improvement. We met with that that public hearing was open for 18 months, for a year and a half. So we heard a lot from the neighborhood and investigated a lot of things that they said, and we finally came up with that subdivision that left portions of the road unimproved at the request of the abutters. So that's how that all happened. Normally, the planning board would accept the recommendation of staff, for access and safety. But there was so much input from the abutters who were not actually part of the subdivision plan, right? They did not want that mitigation. So that's why the portions remained unpaved.
May I ask a question? Catherine, was there drainage, was there a severe drainage problem? As Selectman Whedon mentioned, we're looking at $70,000 for drainage. Did the drainage problem exist prior to the development, the new development?
No, to bring the road.
So the new development did provide some drainage. It sounds like there was a problem that was mitigated afterwards with the abutter, Ernie. So what we're proposing is, because we are basically repaving what is essentially a country road, we want to make sure that we're not creating drainage issues because we're now providing a 20-foot wide paved surface.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman? Let me answer your question. No, I had no drainage problem. None at all. I didn't have a drainage problem till they started to build the road. Then I had a big drainage problem. Do you understand that? Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name's Timothy Dorsey. I live at 86 Blue Castle Drive, and we're here to talk about costs. Oh, hi, Timothy Michael Dorsey, 86 Blue Castle Drive, and I understand we're here to talk about costs on improvements, maintaining, paving the road, right? Well, the planning board, before any houses were even built, in the special permit, big legal document that I have, signed by everybody, stamped, notarized, town clerk and everything, that the new homeowners of Carriage Road and Blue Castle Drive, Aquay Highlands, these people, when they signed their contract to purchase these houses, well, the tri-par agreement put in fine writing that these people in perpetuity would be responsible for the costs, for the money spent to maintain the entire length of Blue Castle Drive. I didn't bring it with me tonight. I'm sure Mary Wiegand has a copy. She drew it up. It was her design. And now here we are. These people aren't happy with what they bought. So now they want to put the costs onto us? No, I have a legal document, and I will present that here or in a court of law or anywhere. I mean, do we change what we're saying to fit the narrative at the time? No, of course not. So here we are, and we're talking about it. And I had a big water problem after Aquay Highlands was put in. For about, I don't know, a couple hundred feet, the road pitches right towards my property, and every time it rained, it was flooding my whole front yard. So he put in a 3-foot by 3-foot box and piped it to another sewer drain. But that's all clogged up. They don't come around and clean the sewer drains. So, you know, if it does rain hard, my yard in the front gets flooded. But, you know, there's so much that has gone on with this subdivision. And, you know, the planning board dished out this special permit. Every time I came to the planning board meeting, they'd say that they're not responsible. They'd send me to this department or that department. And finally, I had a, you know, point of interest. It was decided right here in this room by the planning board, and I had to make that known to them. And they'd like shoo me off to all these other places. And now here they want to change the major rule that they made to build the thing, that these people would be responsible for the costs. Now they're not happy with the costs, so the planning board wants to change the narrative to fit the moment, like they always do, and I'm not going to go for it. Thank you.
Sir?
Leo Wise, 97 Blue Castle. Tim, yeah, he did have a water problem, but Tim, if the town took the road, they'd clean the drainage for you. No, they would. If the town took the road, they would clean your drainage. I live at 97. I don't have a road, and I pay taxes for not having a road. So a road isn't a bad idea it doesn't seem really, it's not 20 years, $200 a quarter. That's not really a lot of money to have a road that I can actually use to pay taxes on, that I pay taxes on, that I don't have. Just a point, the girl talking about she has a road, it's all beat up, she likes it. That's great, she has a road. I don't have a road. That's all.
Okay. Come on up.
Evening. Michael Burridge, 19 Blue Castle Drive. My wife and I purchased the property in '98, and within, I think, a year, year and a half, we were asked to help pay for the water main that went down the road. I forget what the price of that is. I may even still be paying for it. I think it was between $16,000 and $20,000. And now I'm being asked to pave the road. I'm wondering, should I figure on putting in some gas lines and utilities, Cablevision while I'm at it? When will I stop putting money into the road that this developer, I think, should have done in the first place? I'm not sure what the design looks like, but I've got about 20 cedar trees that are probably 20 feet tall. I expect, and my dad and I planted those, I don't know how long ago, I expect that I may lose all of those. I don't want to bear the cost of transplanting them and moving them. It just doesn't make any sense, but I really do not want to have them taken down. I do have, never did, but once they did the patchwork to the road that runs by, I've got 355 foot of frontage on this road that we're talking about that is partially paved, patched. That patch that was done by the developer sheds water into my driveway. It doesn't come down the driveway, it's very long, but it does pond. This time of the year, it starts to freeze when it gets wet, and it's an inconvenience. And I've got a couple of nice cars, and I just drive slow. I don't just drive slow down the road. That's all it takes. While others can hardly see them go by the house. They go by so quickly. It worries me that once it's paved, that they will probably go even faster. But
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
One more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't have to vote on it.
No.
My name is Terry Ronach, and I live at 104 DeGrasse Road. And we also have a lot, that second lot behind us, that abuts Blue Castle. So we are a butter of Blue Castle, and our property, the end of our DeGrasse property, also abuts the end of Blue Castle. So we are listed as one of the abutters. And this is a multi-layered issue, and I've been to a couple of the more recent planning board meetings that involve drainage and, you know, some of the abominations from that developer, trash piled on conservation land, trailers parked on, it's been, just in the time that we've been there, like 3 years, the problems are unbelievable. And it's a multi-layered problem, and you have residents that own in the development and then residents that are outside. But some of us residents weren't part of the original process. So we've bought the property, or the property has changed hands since the original residents that surrounded this development, who didn't want the road developed or didn't want the front of that road improved, and all that. And now we're dealing with a lot of issues that went along with that, the potholes. But what I'm here to talk about is a safety issue, because at the end of Blue Castle, where it is unpaved, is a fire hydrant that is almost pretty much inaccessible by the fire department. I can't imagine the way it's overgrown, but it services, most likely, it's the closest to our property, and 4 or 5 of the other properties at the end of Blue Castle, and even probably some of the properties that abut Blue Castle that are under grass. So I think that's another thing to consider, is that, you know, you're asking that that the residents here pay for this improvement on the road, and I agree with Mr. Weiss that, you know, when you look at the cost, yes, to have a paved road there, but, and it should have been done by the developer, and it wasn't for whatever reason, but I also feel like there's a safety issue that, you know, the residents that live around there should expect that the fire department can access that fire hydrant that's providing safety for those homes, and the wooded area around it, of the town land that's completely wooded, that also abuts that part of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Tammy Wise. I'm also at 97 Blue Castle. This is just a small minor thing, but when the carriage road was put in that part of those developments.
Excuse me. Please take the conversation out in the hall. Thank you.
When that development was put in, there was a set of cluster mailboxes put in for them as well. Our postmaster will not deliver mail that needs to be delivered to our address because it won't fit in the mailbox. We have to go to the post office to go pick up our mail now because it won't be delivered because they will not drive down a dirt road. But they deliver to everybody else above us and those cluster boxes. So that's all.
Okay, board.
Oh, we don't make,
Somebody else wants to come up.
Mike Ronhock, 104 DeGrasse. I have a couple questions on the cost, like you said. So this, you know, I think everybody understands the center section of that road was, you know, they put a cluster development right in the center section of the road. They didn't pave the whole thing, they only did the center. So what has to be done to that center section and Carriage Road? And what's the cost involved in that part of it?
So Carriage Road is not part of this road conversion, so there.
With just the intersection or whatever,
So
right?
the portion of Blue Castle that was improved by the subdivision, we are not proposing any additional improvements.
None. And what's the, you said there's a holding from the developer? Is it an amount?
No, everything
There's
is.
nothing?
Nothing. The planning board has released all the security.
So it's 100% on, it's 100% residents, and it's from the main road to the asphalt, then the continuation up the top end
It's,
of it.
so the road conversion is all of the properties on Blue Castle. So even those that were part of the Aquay Highlands subdivision are part of this road conversion. They would be paying an equal share.
Right, but there'd be no construction on that part of the road.
Correct.
You would just match what's there already? And
Correct.
what would that look like on the bottom and on the top? Would it look the same? Like just right there, there's no actual curbings, just a berm or whatever you want to call it on the edge, and so it would look the same on the top, on the improvement, and would match that, or it would be different?
It would be the same. It would be a 20-foot wide road with a berm.
In surface drainage, no granite, like it wouldn't be set back onto anybody's property or anything like that? No? Okay. And what about, and then there's cost for drainage, is that only on the lower portion or on the upper
On
portion
both.
too?
Correct, both. All of where we would be making improvements includes drainage.
Okay, so the top part, the lower part is pretty obvious because it's a sloped hill all the way down. So the upper part is kind of flat, So where would that pitch to, and where would the drains be?
We would,
I mean, would they be in front of someone's property, or would they be at
We
the
would
end
be
of the road,
within-
or go back towards?
we would be within the 40-foot layout. So we would be putting drainage out of, we would we would crown the road, so there would be drainage on both sides of the road at a low point, and we would install drainage there.
So somewhere along that, where you determine where it
Correct.
dips down and try to go to that center point,
Correct.
wherever
Yes.
that lands in front of someone's property? All right, so, and at the very end, is that enough room for, you know, ambulance or fire truck to be able to turn around? What, it looks like it just kind of ends.
It's, right, it would be a T turnaround. So there
T
would,
turnaround, so they would use someone's driveway, or how would that work?
within the 40-foot layout.
What do you mean a T, can you explain what's a T turnaround? Like you go up and then back into,
Correct.
so it would go into someone's property
It
in
would be
there?
within the 40-foot layout.
Oh, okay, so 40 feet is wide enough to
Yes.
turn that around? Okay. That's, you know, that is an issue, though, up the end. I don't think you could get an ambulance to that last house, or any of the houses up there. And a fire truck, I don't think, the way it exists right now. I think it's an issue. You've got town water up there, and a fire hydrant and everything.
Okay. Do I have a, do you want to close the public hearing, or do you want
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
to, Tom,
Yes.
Yes.
close the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, now discussion?
Nope.
No discussion? Okay.
Maybe just clarify that we're not taking a position.
You don't have to.
No further action.
Okay. Discussion and recommendations for award of contract from municipality solid waste hauling and disposal. Gotta do contracting. Catherine?
So this is a recommendation to award a contract for a tip fee for disposal of MSW collected at the transfer station for calendar year 2025. The proposed cost, which includes transportation from the transfer station to the disposal site, is $126 per ton. For bulky waste, it would be $163.50 per ton, including transportation, or $155 per hour if it's tipped at the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station. And a contract would be awarded to Gotta Do Contracting, who is the current operator of the transfer station and who currently holds our disposal contract.
Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Just as far as, Catherine, where does this stand compared to last year?
So it is about a 3% increase.
3%.
Okay.
Any questions? Go ahead.
That answered one of my questions.
Exactly, it was
The other
mine too.
question is, were there other proposals?
So I did reach out to, I think we had talked last year, at the Upper Cape Regional Transfer Station, which the town of Mashpee with the towns of Falmouth and Sandwich, lease out that property to Covosa Disposal Corp. They have been working on permitting to rail solid waste to out-of-state facilities. They're still working on that permitting, so they were not in a position to provide a price for us for this coming year.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? Tom? No? David?
I do not.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, number 6, discussion of nominations for Mashpee representatives to the Barnstable County Coastal Resource Committee. Primary voting member, Ashley Fisher. Water Quality Coordinator. Alternative member, Robert, I can never say Bob, Tomino. Natural Resources Director.
Do you want a motion?
I need a motion?
Motion to approve Ashley Fisher as primary and Robert Tamayo as alternate for representatives for the Barnstable Coastal Resource Committee.
Second?
Tom?
Yes.
Michaela?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Okay, number 7. We should give everybody a hand who gets nominated for any committee. Water quality update and presentation. Ed Eisner.
Good evening, Ashley Fisher, Water Quality Coordinator. We're finally here to discuss the highly anticipated Mashpee Wakeby diagnostic study and the Mashpee Water Quality Report for the estuaries from 2019 to 2023. So we're going to start with the estuaries report, if that's okay, and then we'll jump into the Mashpee Water Quality Diagnostic Study for Mashpee Wakeby.
Okay.
Here's Ed Eichner.
Thank you.
Good evening. Is this an actual pointer? All right. Well, first talk. We're going to talk about the water quality in Papaneset and Wacoit Bays. This is the delayed report on the 2023 reports. This is pretty much everything that you know in terms of what you're working on with your wastewater plan, trying to figure out nitrogen reductions to restore these systems. It's happening pretty much up and down the Cape. You do the monitoring to figure out what's going on with those estuaries, how they're changing over the short and the long term. Long term, you would be able to see if there are any trends or anything like that. And then you need to have this kind of activity to really track your compliance in the regulatory environment with TMDLs and compliance with the Clean Water Act. Just a reminder, the MEP assessments, they were done in 2004 for Papaneset, 2013 for Wacoit. That used data from this program that was started earlier. Papaneset was 1997 to 2023, 2003. Wacoit was 2002 to 2010. Those assessments are complete ecosystem assessments. So they looked at the sediments and how much nitrogen those contribute, measuring the stream flows so that we actually have an idea of how much nitrogen is coming in from each of the streams that are feeding into those systems. Looking at the benthic infauna, the animals that live in the sediments, how they're doing. Had continuous data, looked at eelgrass. Eelgrass is a sort of a keystone species. If you lose eelgrass, that's a reflection of how much nitrogen is coming into the system. And then got an idea of the tides, how the tides go in and out so that you can relate how much nitrogen is coming in to what you actually measure in the water column. Then we put all that together into the water quality models. Those are the same water quality models that are available to you right now that could be used to test some of the strategies that you're doing in your watershed and figure out, are you going to make it in terms of the water quality?
Ed,
All of
sorry.
that-
Can I
yeah.
just ask you a quick question? So everything we're looking at today is results from like spring and summer of 2023, correct?
You will be looking at 2023. I'm also going to wrap in the 2 years prior to that too. So 2021, 2022, 2023.
Okay, so we can use that as a comparison, but, so when are we, I know we're getting off track here, but curious, as far as this year, this, spring and summer.
Yep.
When are we, is that something, because we've been waiting so long for this, it feels like we're now a year behind?
Yep, I understand that.
Yeah.
Typically, the data comes out of the lab for these monitoring programs somewhere starting from January into April. So that data will be available at that time. If you want to get sort of back on track, I would think about doing something at that point. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
So, so back to the MEP then was used to create these TMDLs. TMDLs are total maximum daily loads. They can either be concentrations or they can be loads that DEP proposes to EPA, EPA reviews, and then endorses, and they become regulatory standards under the Clean Water Act. And so for Papaneset, you have 5 restoration TMDLs for various portions of the system. They're all at 0.38 milligrams per liter total nitrogen. For Wacoit, you have 9 of them, plus 3 protective TMDLs. And protective TMDLs in DEP world those are okay with the amount of nitrogen that's going into them now. You just don't want to exceed this concentration. So that's sort of the regulatory structure in terms of the water quality. You have been monitoring. There are 18 stations in Wacoit. You're doing 4 sampling events every summer, 2 in July, 2 in August. There are 16 stations in Papaneset, same sort of strategy. You can see they sort of run from the interior portions all the way out towards the inlet. Now these are the total nitrogen concentrations, broken down in a number of different ways. Let's see if this works. Yes. So anything in the red with the black outlines, those are the 2023. The orange with the black outlines, 2022. And then the blue with the dark outline is 2021. And then as you go back, those are averages of particular years. The long-term means are actually those things that were used in the MEP, which are averages of 8 years. And usually we tried when we were putting this stuff together to do that kind of aggregation and the averaging over a long period of time, because you can see the high variability from year to year that occurs at these stations. The take home for Wacoit Bay is everything's over these thresholds. This is the system threshold at 0.38. Yehu is at 0.446. Quashnet, Upper Eel River is at 0.5. Everything is over those standards. This is not news. This is sort of where you've been for a while now. We also, in terms of presenting the data, went through and did what's called a health index that combines a whole bunch of readings: nitrogen, chlorophyll, dissolved oxygen, clarity, and puts all of that information together. In this particular graph, the dark blue is the long term. This red line here is anything below that line is poor health. And so you can see that sometimes you've actually got fair health, but you also see that there's a fair amount of fluctuation, just like you saw in the total nitrogen. In 2021, you saw improvements in about half of the stations from the long term, but then in 2022, 11 of the 16 stations actually had decreases. 2023, you had more decreases. most of the system is in the fair to poor, moderate to fair category. None of these stations, in terms of that fluctuation, had any sort of increases across all 3 years. So you have this system, as you would expect in most ecosystems. There's fluctuations. You don't have a straight line. You have kinds of wiggling around, but you have a poor, generally impaired system, poor. And this is sort of this is the same information presented spatially by station. Anything that's in red with the red triangles, that's poor in that index. Anything that's yellow is moderate. Anything that's blue, which is pretty much only down close to the inlets, is high quality under the health index. So you can see in the upper portions of the system, just as you would see in any of the estuaries that were looked at in the MEP, the closer you are to the interior of the estuary where there is less tidal flushing, those are going to be the poorest water quality. Closer you get to the inlets where there's better flushing, tidal flushing, you have the higher quality waters. But you can see that there's little fluctuations in terms of things. Things like the Childs pretty much is always poor. Yehu, Hamblin, sort of in the moderate to poor category. Over in Papaneset, this is the same sort of setup. This only has one threshold, that's 0.38. Everything's above that in terms of the total nitrogen concentrations, so you're above what's recommended in terms of or what's required under the TMDL. Same sort of idea for the health indexes. This actually had worse kinds of conditions occurring. In 2021, it had improvement at all 14 of the stations. In 2022, it went back the other way. 12 of the 14 stations had poor water decreases in the index. 2023, 11 of the 14 had more decreases. So 9 of the 14 stations had decreases across all 3 years, 2021, 2022, 2023. So by my read of this situation, Papaneset actually seems to be getting worse faster than what's going on in Wacoit. Again, this is the spatial presentation of that. The Mashpee River up and down is got poor water quality. Shoestring Bay in that poor to moderate category. Even though out in the middle of the bay, you're still in that moderate category. So you're not, most of the blues, you only see them offshore. So sort of the take-homes, the same take-homes that you've probably been hearing from Brian as he's come and talked to you before. There's increasing impairments, sort of what you would expect as you get more development in the watershed, you add more nitrogen. You have the nitrogen that's in the watershed reaching the bay with the groundwater eventually. You're going to get higher nitrogen concentrations. You're going to get more declines. You're starting to see those declines move closer and closer to the inlets because the water quality conditions are getting poorer throughout most of the bay at this point. The recommendations at this point is to continue the monitoring program. You're on the precipice, you're moving forward with your CWMP. You're going to, at some point, implement that to the point that you should start to see some improvements. You're going to need that monitoring to be able to document that improvement. I would also recommend that you consider updating the baseline. You're going to have a comparison for sort of the benthic infauna and the sediments, the water quality to be able to say we've improved X amount. whatever that X amount is. So you might want to consider to be able to say, if it's actually poorer, you would be able to say, we had this much improvement, as opposed to having the MEP as your baseline when conditions were actually a little bit better. So that's something I think you should consider in terms of moving forward with this, especially as you're starting to go forward with getting properties hooked up to sewer and having a discharge. So that's that talk, and any questions that you might have, or?
Okay. Well, we knew it wasn't going to be good news,
No.
that's for sure.
No, and I mean, the sewer system isn't up online
running
yet, so
yet.
we won't see improvements
For a
until,
few years.
until that gets started.
Exactly. Any
I think
questions?
I think the thing that jumps out at me every time, when you show the map with the entire bays, is that the areas that are most impeded, that are red, are always around the concentrated developments. I mean, the Sconset Islands, the Monomoskoye area, that whole side is just like, red. It's not going to get better. And so those are critical areas. 100% loss of eelgrass in Papaneset watershed, that's disturbing. Where it is such a critical species to, your scallops and everything else. That's the canary in the coal mine. So, again, disappointing. I understand it takes time to clean it up, but it's an urgent problem. Yeah.
One of the sort of, I think, good news sort of parts of the way these ecosystems function is that as you start to do improvements, those areas that are red, the most interior portions, are going to be the ones that are going to start to see the improvements first.
John? Any questions?
Not much to.
Michaela? No? Tom?
Oh,
Thank you.
It's got to be done. We have to move forward. The sooner the better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to get any better at all without our health. So, let's get going sooner rather than later.
Okay, so now we can start on Mashpee Wakeby.
All right. Well, I think, the town has some congratulations to actually getting to a plan, figuring out a strategy about how you're going to deal with Mashpee Wakeby. We obviously had a team that put together a lot of the work, and I'm presenting it, but there's a lot of folks that were involved in doing all of this. Just to start off, this is Mashpee Wakeby. It actually is two basins that are connected, Wakeby Pond to the north, Mashpee Pond to the south. It's split by Sandwich and Mashpee. Most of it's in Mashpee, but some portions are in Sandwich. Most of the watershed is in Sandwich. There's a difference in terms of the basins. Wakeby is about 20 meters deep, Mashpee is about 30 meters deep, but the area of the surface is about the same. And Matt, this is the headwaters of the Mashpee River. So what goes through this watershed, a lot of it comes out through that Mashpee River. This is the algal bloom that shows up in Wakeby Pond pretty much like clockwork at around the same time of the year in June. I think we have a pretty good handle on why this shows up, and it's certainly one of the reasons that I think you folks move forward with doing this. We proposed the study that we have. It's a diagnostic study and a management plan. The diagnostic study portion is looking at the pond and figuring out how the ecosystem works, why you see the water quality that you see in the water column. The management plan is figuring out the ways that you can restore the water quality in the water column. So we have the list of all of the things that we went through here. We did a lot of water quality monitoring, including phytoplankton surveys of the whole population. We looked at sediments to get an idea of how much they contribute to what you see in the water column. We did measurements of stream flow at the Mashpee River to get an idea how much nutrients are going out of the pond through that stream. We looked at rooted plants and mussels, just to be able to say, okay, are they a large component of what causes the water quality that you see in the water column? I will tell you that they're relatively sparse for the size of these ponds, so not big factors in terms of this. We looked at watershed, looked at the parcels within the watershed, and figure it out how much water is coming from those parcels, how much is coming from the rest of the watershed, how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus, and then we did a little bit of a stormwater survey, and then pulled all of that together for the diagnostic summary, and then did the pond management plan that we're talking about in the report you have. We went through and we looked at the historical data that you have available. Most of that is the PALS, the Pond and Lake Stewards snapshots that have been done since 2001. They're done annually in late summer, and they have water column readings of dissolved oxygen and temperature through the whole water column, measures of clarity, and then collection of samples for chemistry of various sorts, as well as phytoplankton pigments. All of that's consistently done over at the SMAS lab. There is data that was collected through the Mashpee Environmental Coalition. They did those profiles through the water column of dissolved oxygen, temperature, and clarity, measures of clarity. They didn't collect water quality samples, but those kinds of profiles are useful for understanding the variability from year to year about what goes on with DO, with dissolved oxygen and temperature. And then we had some stream data that was collected, most of it not at the outlet out of Mashpee Pond, but at various points. We had some from the Estuaries Project that's focused mostly on Mashpee River estuaries portion, and then there was some from the U.S. Geological Survey, a couple of transects actually up and down the river. I'm trying real hard not to drift into jargon, but I'm going to put a little primer up here to sort of give you a sense of what's really sort of important in understanding the water quality and the results that we have. In the spring, the whole water column mixes. So there's enough wind energy that's going across that the whole water column, top to bottom, mixes. And that's sort of the condition that you have from roughly November all the way through April. Once it starts to warm up, this upper layer of the pond warms faster than the wind energy can mix the whole water column, and you get this temperature layering. That upper layer is called the epilimnion. It continues to be mixed. It warms faster. It is warmer. Then you have a transition layer between the epilimnion and a colder bottom layer called the hypolimnion. That hypolimnion is cut off from the atmospheric mixing, and if the sediments remove dissolved oxygen from that layer, you get anoxia. You get complete lack of oxygen. That's something that happens in Mashpee, Wakeby, in both basins. As you move into late fall, November, the temperature in that epilimnion is going to fall with the declining temperatures of the season. It's going to get closer and closer to what the hypolimnion temperature is, and then the wind energy is going to take over and you're going to get the mixing again. I'm going through this primer because I'm probably going to drift into saying epilimnion and hypolimnion, so I just want you to be prepared. The historical data, both Mashpee and Wakeby have been impaired since 2001. So the first PALS monitoring that was done, both Mashpee and Wakeby ponds were impaired at that point. It was impaired at the deep level, so you wouldn't necessarily see it. Upper portions of the pond tended to be okay. That's sort of the history that you have seen at this point. You got to having these blooms in Wakeby only recently, but the bottom of this pond, the deeper portions of this pond have been impaired for a very long time. There are no notable trends because of that impairment has been pretty consistent. Although in 2008, Wakeby changed from what was going on in Mashpee. In 2008, Wakeby suddenly had lower clarity than what was going on in Mashpee. I don't know what happened there, but that happened in 2008, and it's been consistent pretty much ever since. Phosphorus is the key in terms of managing this. You know, a lot in the estuaries, we focus really on the nitrogen. For ponds, it's phosphorus. It's a difference in terms of what species need, how much is available. Wakeby has higher phosphorus concentrations pretty much throughout the water column on a regular basis compared to Mashpee. Both of them stratify. They get the layering going on. It happens pretty much in June, sometimes in May. But once it happens, you get anoxia that occurs. Almost at the same point that you get that stratification, that bottom layer gets cut off from the atmosphere, you start to lose oxygen very fast. That means that the sediments have a lot of capacity to remove oxygen. Once that anoxia occurs, you start to release phosphorus and nitrogen out of the sediments. And that's sort of the key for what I think is happening in Wakeby Pond.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
So with all of these ponds and bays, a lot of them aren't that deep, but isn't there a system that could be placed into the river of the bays and flush that bad stuff out, a collection system and some type of filtration system in the bay, in the river, in the Mashpee, Wakeby ponds?
There are.
We're doing nothing. I mean,
There's a lot of different strategies that are talked about in the management plan, and some of them include doing something in the pond. Those tend to be sort of experimental. They haven't been done on the Cape. There are more well-established techniques that will be able to get you there, and they've got the costs have a certainty, the regulatory process has a certainty, and so that's sort of the recommendation that we're headed to. But hold that thought. Okay. I will get there. Okay. The water column. So part of looking at and doing these management plans is looking at what you actually measure in the water column. But what you see in the water column is a reflection of all of the sources added to the pond. It's the watershed inputs, it's the sediment inputs. Those two things are primarily going to determine what you measure in the water column, but within the water column there is also things like phytoplankton that are going to change around what the response is. Deep DO loss, dissolved oxygen loss, as soon as stratification occurred. I talked about that as early as May when we were out there doing the monitoring in 2022 and 2023. Total phosphorus additions occurred throughout the hypolimnion. They varied between the 2 years. 2023 actually had a lot more phosphorus that was added to the water column. Those kinds of variations in terms of planning out what your best goals are make it a little bit difficult to figure out definitively what your results are going to be. You lose about 3 or 4 meters every summer. worth of clarity, and that's really about phytoplankton. That's the primary thing that's going to make you lose clarity. The June blooms that you see are likely due to a shallow start to stratification. There's evidence that suggests, we didn't actually measure it, but this evidence suggests from the measurements we do have that you're getting stratification in Wakeby probably up at 3 or 4 meters shallow, and that anoxia that occurs as soon as you get that stratification is pumping out a whole bunch of phosphorus out of the sediments. That's what's causing your bloom. And there's cyanobacteria in these ponds all the time. That's a reflection of an impaired system. The populations are pretty much always have cyanobacteria out in the middle of the pond. You may not see them on the shoreline, but they're out there waiting to be concentrated. I don't know. I don't think I have probably time for that. Sediments. Sediments are sort of the key in looking at this pond. We were out there collecting cores throughout both of the basins, shallow, deep, trying to figure out, collecting those cores, incubating them to figure out how much phosphorus would come off of the bottom and under what conditions. And these are the results from those cores. Mashpee down in the bottom, Wakeby up at the top, and you see most of the cores pretty much have the same sort of amounts of phosphorus that come out of them in both ponds. The only exception is these very shallow ones, not very shallow, between 3 and 4 meters. Again, I think this is the cause of why you're getting the blooms that you're getting in Wakeby Pond. These are being exposed to anoxic conditions, and you're getting a lot of phosphorus that's coming off of the bottom. You get the bloom, and then that layer of stratification, that upper layer, goes deeper into the pond, and it sort of goes away. So it's the function of the early in the year stratification, low DO occurring quickly, phosphorus coming off of these high phosphorus sediments, and that's what's causing what's happening. Mashpee Pond, it's actually has more phosphorus in the bottom than Wakeby, but it's because of its structure, it doesn't have the same sort of response. This is what I was talking about, the cyanobacteria. This bright green is the cyanobacteria. This is Wakeby Pond in 2022, 2023. And you can see the concentration, the cyanobacteria, the dominant portion most of the time of the phytoplankton population in the pond. As a matter of fact, out in the center of the pond, most of the concentrations are above the public health advisory limit that Mass DPH has. These are not getting concentrated up along the shoreline, so you're not tending to see them, but this is what's in the water column. So we started to bring all of this information together, the synthesis. We put together those budgets, a water budget, a phosphorus budget, nitrogen budget. I'll talk mostly about the water and the phosphorus. Wakeby Pond, this blue area is what goes through Wakeby Pond. Water hangs out in the pond about a year. 80% of the water that comes into this pond is from groundwater. Only 3% of it's coming in via wastewater. So that's water that's being imported into those properties and then put into the watershed through the public water supply system. Mashpee Pond, on the other hand, you notice this is the green area. This is the groundwater shed to Mashpee Pond. It's relatively small. So most of the water that comes through Mashpee is coming through Wakeby. It gets into Wakeby, goes into Mashpee. That's going to inform your management strategies because that's also the primary source of phosphorus that's coming in to Mashpee. So water is in Mashpee about 2 years. Flow from Wakeby is 68% of the water that gets into Mashpee Pond. Groundwater is only 8% of that input. The other thing to sort of take home from all of this is that there is a portion on the down gradient sides of these ponds where the water from the ponds are flowing back out into the groundwater. So it's not going out through the Mashpee River. Some portion is going out back into the groundwater and flowing away from the pond. So in terms of management, any of these properties that are along the shoreline here, water is going away from the pond. They are not contributing to the pond. So we looked at parcels that are up gradient that are contributing to the pond. We looked at individual parcels, their septic systems, the age of their septic systems, and their distance from the pond to figure out if phosphorus has made it to the pond. So anything in pink or green on these maps, those parcels are contributing to what you actually see in the water column. So when you're talking about, for example, the discussions that you're having about putting in a packaged plant up to handle the portions of Mashpee that are on the north side of Wakeby, those would be the properties that would be included. Those are the ones that are contributing phosphorus at this point. So put these together to give you a relative idea of the different sources. These pie diagrams, so we have the external sources. Wastewater is the primary source, this orange side. But once you add in the sediments, that wastewater drops down to only 20%. So if we look at what you actually see in the water column in the summer, 62% of that is from the sediments. In Mashpee Pond, same sort of thing. 54% of that, what you see in the water column during the summer, is from the sediments. If we cut out the sediments, 75% of what you see in Mashpee Pond is coming from Wakeby Pond. So in terms of thinking about the management and how you are going about doing this, this will sort of play into the recommendations I've got for you. Everything's, basically both ponds are impaired. Sediments are the largest source. Anoxia is what's causing the sediments to give you the phosphorus that you see in the water column. Shallow stratification that's occurring in June is the key for what's happening in Wakeby. And phosphorus management really is what you need to focus in on. So in terms of setting up a management strategy, you sort of have to look at what your goals are. And it's sort of difficult in this system because there are no measurements of acceptable water quality conditions. There aren't any historically. There certainly weren't in 2022 or 2023. Even in the spring, you have total phosphorus concentrations that are too high. So we went through, we used the ecoregion threshold as sort of a starting point. I would say you're going to have to do something because you have an impaired system, but I would monitor that to see how well that gets, how well that improves your ecosystem, and then adapt from that. There is that high variability associated with this that's a problem in terms of setting up your goals. There's high variability in what you see in the water column. There's high variability associated with how much comes off the sediments. And there is high variability that occurs in the stream flow. In the summer, certain summers where the stream flow gets lower coming out of Mashpee Wakeby, you're actually holding on to phosphorus longer, so the concentrations are gonna go up, the potential for impairment goes up as well. So when we were reviewing management options, we looked at the Mashpee-Wakeby situation. We looked at the performance rate record associated with similar sorts of setting, the ease of implementation, the cost. We went through and we reviewed. There's a big chart in the report that goes through and looks at watershed controls, physical controls, chemical controls, biological controls. Some of the things are looking at ways that you might remove that. Some of the lower quality water in the bottom, treat it, put it back, or shift it downstream. Those really haven't been done. So what we went through, we looked at the applicable options. And these, from our perspective, these are ones that have been used, that have relatively good track records in terms of establishing costs, have an ability to really sort of say, okay, this is what we're likely to get in terms of phosphorus removal. What generally we came out with was that you're going to need to have some sort of high performance phosphorus reduction of what's coming out of the sediments. That's why I think you need to have sort of an adaptive, sort of flexible kind of management strategy that involves doing something to try to improve it, monitoring that, and see how it goes in terms of the improvement. We came up with some estimated costs. Alum treatments have been done in a lot of places, so the costs that are and the strategies, the how you have to go through permitting, all that sort of stuff are pretty well known. So for Wakeby, it was about $725,000. For Mashpee, it's about $960,000. We looked at hypolimnetic aeration, that's adding oxygen to the lower portions of the pond. Hasn't been done on the Cape. Has been done off Cape in some settings similar to Mashpee-Wakeby. Our costs, this is something that's you would have to maintain, though. Something that you would have to have power, you would need to make sure that it was working the right way, et cetera. An alum application is something you do monitoring, you don't have this ongoing sort of maintenance and associated with it. Our cost estimate was $1.5 million for Wakeby, $2 million for Mashpee for this hypolimnetic aeration. We looked at dredging. We added this in because it's a potential thing, but the cost is extreme, and there are lots of logistical questions about getting a dredge into the system and actually applying it.
And $21 million.
Nobody has done that on the Cape. What?
$21 million.
Yeah, $21 million. There was some talk, we had one pond that we worked on in Orleans where they actually talked about doing that, and the roads weren't wide enough to get the current dredges that were available.
And where do you
down
put the
the pond.
sediment? Where do you put the sediment?
Well, that was another question, and that sort of sunk the whole thing too, so.
Ed, can you explain what you mentioned aeration?
Yep.
What do you reference when you say aeration? What do you mean by that?
It would be basically a pump on the shoreline with a structure, with power, adding air, probably oxygen. Oxygen would be more efficient to that bottom layer in such a way that it would address the phosphorus coming out of the sediments. It would address the anoxia in that bottom layer, and it would stop the phosphorus from coming out. It's sort of one of those things. One of the reasons it hasn't been done on the Cape is there is some sensitivity about being able to maintain that cold layer. That's why you do hypolimnetic aeration. There have been aeration projects that have mixed the whole water column. hypolimnetic aeration, and the idea is you're trying to maintain that habitat and that cold layer without disturbing it, and not pushing all that phosphorus that's in that bottom layer up into the warmer layers.
So the aeration part is more just the upper layers, it's keeping everything down below.
You're just keeping it in that hypolimnetic, that bottom layer. Again, that really hasn't been done. There's no place on the Cape that it's been done. It's been done off Cape. There's lots of different kinds of technology out there about how to install it and everything else like that, but it hasn't been done on the Cape, so it doesn't have a really long track record throughout most of Mass.
So one more question. You mentioned the alum treatment is Wakeby, then Mashpee, but if, I believe you said it was like 80% of the flow is from Wakeby into Mashpee. So why wouldn't we just do an alum treatment in Wakeby?
That is actually the recommendation.
All right.
Go, John.
So this is the recommended management summary.
All right.
Implement an alum treatment for Wakeby Pond. Do water quality monitoring in both basins to see how the alum treatment works, how well it does in Wakeby Pond for 2 to 4 years to account for that residence time that occurs in Mashpee Pond. After that point, review all of the data that you've collected, do an alum treatment in Mashpee Pond based on that new information. But you're going to have to continue, in my opinion, you should keep doing monitoring to see how well you're doing. Some of these alum treatments have had performance for 20 years. Some of them have had 10 years. You're going to have to see how well it goes. And so usually a conservation commission in terms of permitting will have some sort of monitoring program. But I would think it would be to your advantage to keep doing a monitoring. It doesn't have to be onerous, maybe twice a year.
So would you do Wakeby and then wait 2 years to do Mashpee?
Yes.
Or you do them together
No.
You want to see if it
My
works
recommendation would be do Wakeby,
first?
do it first, do your monitoring to figure out what sort of impact that has on Wakeby as
And-
well as Mashpee.
And then see what,
And then see, does that change the calculations that you have to do for Mashpee?
okay.
that
And I
would
have one more question, actually. As far as phosphorus, that's what we're talking about, right?
Right.
What percent of is fertilizer play into the phosphorus?
Fertilizer doesn't tend to play any role. There's restrictions on the use of phosphorus for lawns. The only time that you're supposed to be able to use phosphorus on lawns is if you are establishing a lawn. That's what state regulations say. Now, in practice, it probably doesn't make that big of a difference because most of the folks that would be doing the phosphorus additions, probably most of that phosphorus is being taken up by the grass. So you have regulations that say you can't do it. I'm sure some people do. I don't think it's that big, a big component. Agriculture, in some cases, can be a bigger component, but the only big agriculture component here is the cranberry bog. That's off of Wakeby. And we went through and looked at reasonably conservative assumptions about what that contribution would be, and it works out to be a small contributor to the overall phosphorus budget. So even when we're just looking at just the watershed without the sediments.
Yeah.
So fertilizers, I don't think is a big deal, is the bottom line.
Okay. My question, actually, to go to the cranberry bog, unless I misread, were we at about 13% contribution?
I think it was something like that, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so it's substantial. So you've talked about internal management plan, like how do you manage the phosphorus that's being generated or being released from the sediment? Could you say more about your recommendations for external forces? or external nutrient pollution,
Well,
such as septic?
At this point, it's such a relatively small component of the overall strategy. I think if you can get to something that deals with the sediments, you'll have a better sense after that point of how much the watershed is contributing. So there's, like I said, there's some variability associated with all of this. As you go through and you get more monitoring information across years, you'll have a better sense of being able to say, okay, this is a big contributor or it isn't a big contributor. You've got some discussions right now about that package plant for Wakeby. That was the wastewater, I think, was a larger contributor than anything else to that external load. So if you did something like that, and as I've seen it, that would reduce a lot of the phosphorus input from the watershed if you tackled the wastewater in that
So,
area.
just so I can understand, if we tackled the wastewater that you pinpointed, which we've submitted the SRF for, and also took care of runoff issues, and so stormwater runoff and all of those external loads and the cranberry bog, we would be taking a multi-pronged approach, and we would be addressing external load as well as internal load. Am I?
Right. I mean, it gets back to this, well, let's stick with Wakeby. Wastewater is 52% of that phosphorus input. That is the biggest component. If you tackle that, you may not have to tackle the rest of it, because you're going through and you're looking at, there's an acceptable amount of phosphorus that can be in this pond. You want to have phosphorus in this pond. You don't want to completely remove it, or you're not going to have any fish. So figuring out sort of the right threshold is sort of the key. And if you go through and you remove the sediment portion, maybe you don't need to do anything else in the watershed. You may get to acceptable water quality conditions, depending on the performance of that alum treatment.
If you were to do the alum treatment and then do the dredge, doesn't that encapsulate? So wouldn't you reduce the volume of sediment coming out if it was encapsulated with the alum?
So what the alum treatment is going to do is you're going to add a mixture of aluminum salts that's going to settle on the bottom, and it's going to create a barrier to any phosphorus, chemical phosphorus coming out of that sediments. And over time, the addition that you're getting from the watershed is going to add new sediment on top of that layer. That's why, over a period of time, the alum treatment started to lose its efficacy. So if you do the alum treatment, you are buying yourself some time in order to, and some ponds, we've got some ponds on the Cape that have gone through multiple alum treatments. That has been the way that they have decided to handle it. The flip side is that you still have that wastewater coming into the system. If you can deal with that wastewater within the time that that alum treatment is buying you, then you are potentially cutting down a significant portion, and you've got a better chance at acceptable situation. But you're sort of trying to fine-tune something that's difficult to fine-tune because it's nature.
So, is there any filtration system that's being used? I know you're saying when you push it to the bottom and you seal it, it's not causing a problem. Why aren't we either flushing it and moving it out of the ponds, rivers, bays, and out into the ocean. Why aren't we moving it forward rather than stopping it and laying it on the bottom of the beaches and ponds?
Natural ecosystems, like ponds, hold on to nutrients. That's how they get the growth that they get. And one of the products of getting that kind of life is that life eventually dies. It's gonna fall to the bottom. That's what your sediments are. If you decrease the amount of life that you have in that system, you're gonna decrease the amount of sediments that you have in the pond over time. But it could take decades to get you
That's
to
the
that
problem,
world.
isn't it? It doesn't make any sense to, I know you've thought about this, or I've done this before, but I just think if there was a tidal flow or something, and not that there isn't a pond or a bay, but if the water's moving and it's moving it out to the ocean or into the, away from that area, why can't we help with the, with
Move it along.
yeah, with something to move it along, yeah, exactly. Just by putting in something with the machinery, that'll just push that stuff out with the.
Well, in a lot of ways, that's what a dredging strategy is.
Well, it makes sense to me, because rather than trap it on the bottom of the river, bays, or estuaries, not a good idea in my eyes. But I mean, if you can move it forward and out, it would make a lot more sense, and push it from from one door to the next door. You
Well,
keep pushing it out.
let me
and
just
pushing it
say
out.
that if you do something like dredging, you get to a point, just like you do with the alum treatment, that the pond's natural function to hold on to those nutrients, you're gonna get back to the situation where you were. Because life is gonna grow, it's gonna die, you're gonna have the sediments again. So you're sort of trying to work against nature, but in some ways you're trying to work with what nature does in terms of figuring out strategies. And if you go through and you look at the management plan, there's a lot of different strategies that are out there, tons of experimental strategies about how to do these sorts of things. One of the reasons I've recommended to you the alum treatment is in large part because it has a long track record. It has a long track record on the Cape. You have a certain body of knowledge to be able to say, this is what the expectations are in terms of the performance that you're gonna get to.
I'm guessing you must have done it in the past where the two systems, have you used the two systems to engaged and looked at how efficient each one of the potential uses are clearing the systems out?
Yes, that's what.
So you were able to do that, in other words, you've thought about it and you've looked into, okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of what you'll see in the report are the ranges for different performance related to how much phosphorus reductions you get associated with each of those things. And that's from those comparisons.
Anyone else? Gail, you done? You can, if you ask. Go ahead.
No, I'd rather have people have an opportunity.
David? John?
I'm still, I remember, these presentations for such a long time that what you're saying is fertilizer has, and stormwater runoff, it has no effect on this phosphorus in ponds?
Stormwater runoff, I will tell you, anytime, any studies where we have ever done stormwater monitoring, and I'm typically the one that goes out there and does it, collects the samples, measures the flow and everything else. I went back and I looked at the worst one in terms of the flow that I had seen, which was in Shubal Pond, and it was collecting like, I don't know, 4 acres worth of road area was ending up going through this pipe. The phosphorus input from that was 7% of the overall budget, the overall phosphorus budget. Stormwater doesn't tend, You get very dramatic circumstances when you get a big rain. Absolutely,
Would
but
you
those
seem
big
like-
rains only happen like once every 5 years or so.
But I would say last year we probably got, I think we're getting 3 or 4 a year at least.
Uh-huh.
Correct.
And every time it seems like we have those heavy rains, all of a sudden now the flare-ups seem to be showing more and more. So if I'm just trying to think, okay, if it's runoff and we're having more flare-ups every time we have heavy rains, what else could it be? It's got to be fertilizers. What else? Unless it's wastewater that's in the ground.
It's the question of actually going through and doing the monitoring on all of these various components and sort of believing the data. If we look at, one of the things to sort of look at in terms of thinking about stormwater, the first flush is typically the first runoff that you get that's going into, that's actually moving. That's the highest concentration that you're going to have. So a lot of the very dramatic flows that you see, that's relatively clean water. It doesn't tend to have a lot of phosphorus in it. It's that first flush that is cleaning off the impervious surfaces, the roads, the parking lots. When I was out there, yikes, what did I do? When I was, let's not look at that. I was out there at the Mashpee boat ramp, the Mashpee Pond boat ramp, after, I don't know, it was something ridiculous during the drought. The ridiculous amount of time before we actually had any water that had flushed it off. That first flush that occurred, we had relatively high concentrations, but after that point, it just drops off. There is hardly any phosphorus that is in that. That is sort of the situation with stormwater. That's why stormwater is a relatively small portion of the overall phosphorus load.
All right, one last question and I'll stop. So the northern part of Wakeby
Yep.
has the large, you can see all the development, right? So all the housing at the top, has that been like tested right along the shore, if you will, to say, okay, are they coming up with higher levels of phosphorus or whatever type of chemicals as compared to maybe, on the south side of Wakeby?
Oh,
So do you understand-
So you're asking, if you went along the shoreline
Yep.
and you tried to do measurements of,
From the north side to say the south side.
went along the shoreline and you tried to do measurements of, and try to figure out where those septic plumes were, you're in a lot of ways ending up with the kind of analysis that we went through. When we went through and we looked at all of those houses and their ages of their septic systems and their distance to the pond and everything else, and we put all of that information together with what we figured out from the stormwater contributions and the cranberry bogs and everything else, and we put all that together, it balances out what you actually measure in the water column. So I feel really confident that we've put together something that works, that it makes sense, it fits the ecosystem. Now, if we mess something up big time, it still has to fit within that box.
And
If the septic system is lower, then maybe there's a little bit more room for the stormwater. I don't think the septic is lower, but that's.
What
the
I'm
way
saying
it's
is,
set.
I know when in the first presentation, you did the experience, like the diamonds that you did, or the triangles that you showed as far as the color code, as far as contaminants in that area,
Yeah.
right? If you did that same type of measuring from the north side of Wakeby to maybe the south side of Wakeby, is the north side darker?
No.
Like, so
That-
you're saying
that
it's.
gets back to that question
it's
of,
all
of the mixing
about
that
the same.
occurs. So once you get something in the water column, it tends to get mixed around.
Okay.
It may be little differences along the shoreline, really along the shoreline, but once it gets out into the open water, things get mixed up, and you don't tend to see that kind of thing.
But to John's point, though, I mean, if you tested close to the shoreline, and then you tested at different intervals, but made sure that you were testing and had specific water quality testing stations around the concentrated developments, and I mean, the rainfall is the transmission. That's what captures the phosphorus from the septics that are leaching. I mean, that's what transmits.
It's in the groundwater being driven by the wastewater.
Right,
that's
but if
going
you have a
into the septic
drought,
system.
then what's transmitting it? It's not being transmitted in a drought condition. It's being transmitted faster at more
Groundwater's pretty
rapid.
much moving most of the time, pretty much at the same rate.
But to John's point, I think rainfall events also factor into that, whether it's a higher rate or a slower rate. It has to affect it to some degree.
To
You're
some
saturating
degree,
the ground.
The difficulty is that it's an ecosystem. Rainfall changes don't just impact portions of it, it impacts other portions as well. So in your case, you've decreased, you've had enough of a drought, the groundwater levels have started to drop. That would tend to slow, you would think, the groundwater flow, but it doesn't really, because groundwater is gathering together multiple years worth of flow. The most significant thing that you're going to see out of a drought is that you're going to start to see the Mashpee River get lower. The water is not going to get out of the pond. That's going to drive the concentrations up in the pond. So there's all sorts of factors that go into how these ecosystems work. I know you guys are focused in on the stormwater, but it's not that big of a deal in terms of.
I'm not concerned so much about the stormwater as much as the rainfall events, and if our testing's factoring in drought conditions and, saturation points when you're getting a normal rainfall season, to factor in and to try to identify where the culprits are, like where your highest contributors are. If we're trying to convince Sandwich that, listen, you're a main contributor of the problem, should we be testing right along that shoreline?
If
and-
you want
and
to,
during
people
these
have gone
events?
down that path. That's an expensive path to go down to try to do the shoreline and figure out where all of the various sources are. People have done it. The military did it when they went out at Ashumet. They put in all sorts of wells along the edge of the pond, tried to figure out where all of that was coming from to identify the plume from the treatment plant. Its whole breadth. Typically, most towns don't have that kind of budget to go through and do that kind of activity. That's why we end up doing what we do in terms of looking in detail at each individual parcel to try to give you a better sense. It keeps coming back to, when we put this together, everything sort of balances out in terms of the way the phosphorus budget works. Add something?
I just wanted to interject. We have all of our data. We know what we need to do. Mashpee, Wakeby watershed, if you could just bring it back up, the slide with the watershed. The major sources of phosphorus, we know how we're going to tackle them through sewering and in-pond treatment. We have to do our external treatment at the same time we do our internal treatment. So we're going to take a look at the septic systems. We're going to take a look at the stormwater. We're going to take a look at the cranberry bogs. It's collective sources. It's what we can control. We know we can control those sources. We need to attack them all together. And in turn, treat internally. We know we need to do those things. That's the end of the story for this study. We know Mashpee, Wakeby. Wakeby's the contributor for most of the pond. The upper sources of the watershed are where the phosphorus is coming from. It's already made its way and accumulated within the pond in both basins. So we need to attack the upper watershed and the external sources. They are also internal sources. That's where the groundwater is coming from. Our septic systems, our on-site septic systems, our yard use practices, everything. It's what phosphorus is in everything. So we need to look at external and internal, and I think we have a good management plan moving forward to do that. Treating Wakeby, treating our external sources, and continue to monitor. When we continue to monitor, if we need to treat the Mashpee side with an alum, we will do so. But again, this is just a Band-Aid for the real problem out there, and that's the external sources, our wastewater.
You clarified that. I was just thinking about listening to everything that's been going on, and I'm thinking it's not stormwater, it's not rainwater.
Well, it's collective.
Right, but I mean, it's the fluids, the wastewater treatment plants. It's things of that nature that aren't working effectively, or homes that have wastewater going out, flushing into the ground. And that's what it is. That's what we need to do. We need to concentrate on a wastewater treatment plant and put this place together. It's the only way to stop it that I can see.
And treating the internal load, because we've gotten that this far. We're all excreting for years and years and years, and that's what's accumulated on the bottom of these ponds. And to answer your question with the dredging, we've had other projects where we looked at dredging. It was a roadblock because of sediment reuse. So when you remove the soil from the bottom of these ponds, you have to safely be able to put it somewhere else.
Yes.
And not affect groundwater or drinking water sources.
Luck on that one.
And that is very difficult. I mean, the gentleman in Mashpee who dredged, Mashpee Neck, he used his sediment and put it on a property, but he has monitoring wells where he's monitoring how that sediment is interfering with the groundwater on that site. So it's a whole permitting hurdle that you have to go through to do that. So it's not only dredging the materials in the pond, you have to have plans to reuse them. And because of the agriculture in the immediate area, we might have arsenic or other contaminants that we don't know about that won't meet sediment reuse. Therefore, dredging isn't really an option. It would be great in a perfect world, but we don't live in a perfect world.
Right, instead, rather than just put everything to the sediment to the bottom and protect it so it doesn't get stirred up again. But
I just wanted to give my little 10-second overview of what we're gonna do and the plan moving forward, and we'll look for grant funding to do these things moving forward.
Sounds good.
Well, I think we have our assessment and we have a plan. So I think that's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I think because it actually gives a plan, we don't.
But what I'm thinking is like, Sandwich gets nitrogen mitigation funds from Cape Cod Commission annually, just like we do. It's not nitrogen, so I don't know if you could spend the money on that, or if you could get some mitigation.
Please, everybody, go quietly out. We have other business to attend to.
Contribute, so I mean.
Please,
Financially.
exit quietly.
How do we leverage
Stay for public
to
comment.
make them? It's kind of, it has to be driven by data.
They're waiting for the pace.
Public comment. Richard Klein.
Everything.
Good evening, Richard.
Good evening. Richard Klein, 205 Asher's Path West. After seeing your agenda posted, I looked and I saw that Pickerel Cove project is on the agenda. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is vote against the acquisition of Pickerel Cove. My reasoning for that is I understand that there are going to be a lot of restrictions on that property. It's going to be totally useless to the town. The thing that will happen is that it will make all the pieces of property that are on the pond 100 times more valuable. And we are not getting any, we don't know what they are going to do with those pieces. That's basically it. And I'm just going again to ask you to vote against the acquisition of Pickerel Cove properties. I also want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, and a happy and a prosperous New Year.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Lynn Barbie?
Good evening, Lynn Barbie, 73 Surf Drive. I've been thinking about the town meeting we had and a lot of the questions that were being asked about the particular piece of property that's on Nathan Ellis, 475 Nathan Ellis. And I realized that even though the documents were public, a lot of the people who had questions at that time obviously had not accessed the documents that the CPC had. So I just wanted to share with all of you, and I'd like it included in the minutes if possible, just the recommendations that our conservation agent made about that particular piece of property. This is from Daniel Kent. In my quote, "In my professional opinion, acquiring the parcel at 475 Nathan Ellis Highway would aid in open space preservation, furthering the town's goal of water quality protection. With the dwelling on property, hard compact parking area, and the IA septic system, this parcel could potentially provide recreational benefits to the public and residents of Mashpee. Currently, the harbor master rents dock space from a private landowner on John's Pond. This parcel could potentially allow for seasonal dock space on town land for monitoring and enforcement purposes. With the urgency in town for increased wetland protection and existing amenities on site, make this parcel perfect for the town of Mashpee to acquire." Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Wagon.
End quote.
Hi. Mary Wigan, 35 Ashumert Road, and now for something completely different. There's a very important traffic safety plan being developed by the Cape Cod Commission. It's called the Vision Zero Action Plan. It's kind of a strange name, but the Vision Zero movement is a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and severe injuries, while increasing safe, healthy, equitable mobility for all. The Cape Cod Commission is spearheading this effort by developing a Vision Zero action plan for the entire region of Cape Cod. When completed, it would qualify all 15 towns on the Cape, including Mashpee, for funding to improve the safety of our roadways. So it's super important that we're engaged in this. In this vision of Vision Zero plan, roadway users are encouraged to share their thoughts about roadway safety. So that's the point that the Cape Cod Commission is at. They're asking for people to provide public comment for input as they develop the plan. They don't have the plan yet for public comment, but they're looking for people's thoughts right now. So this Wednesday, December 18th, at 6:30, the Planning Board is going to hold a brief workshop here at Town Hall on how to access those online tools and how to submit comments about roadway safety. So you can come to the Planning Board or you can watch. We're going to live stream it if the technology works. You'll see what we see on the internet. There's also a paper survey and a flyer with a QR code. So I'm hoping that the town manager's office could post those around town for us. Anyways, roadway safety is super important in Mashpee, and I hope and invite everybody to make their comments. If you can't make the workshop or miss it, you can just in any search bar on your computer or phone, just search for Cape Cod Commission Vision Zero, and you'll come to their website and scroll down, and you'll be able to get into their survey and interactive mapper for comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
Liaison reports. John? David?
None at this time.
Mine is, we had a great parade. It was the most people in the audience that watched the parade and also who participated in the parade. It was great.
A lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. Michaela?
Nothing at this time.
Tom?
I'm all set.
Okay, water quality updates. I think we got our water quality updates. What do you have?
Start over?
Town manager reports.
Nothing.
Okay. Michaela, would you read?
I'm going to read this one, correct?
We're doing discussion of the acquisition of real property of Nathan
There
Ellis
two.
Highway first.
The
Do the-
second
one
It's-
includes calls.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to enter into executive session 12/16/2024. I move that the board convene an executive session to discuss the acquisition of real property. 475 Nathan Ellis Highway, parcel 71 through 55-0. 9 Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1353-0. 17 Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1354-0. 25 Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1355-0. 33 Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1356-0. 87 Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1310. 7 Pickerel Cove Circle, parcel 1357-0. 21 Pickerel Cove Circle, parcel 1414-0. 25 Pickerel Cove Circle, parcel 1440. 0 Rear Pickerel Cove Road, parcel 1430. Pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6 of the Open Meeting Law. Purpose 6, the chair having declared that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board with respect to the town's potential purchase of the property, from which the board will not convene an open session.
Do I have a second?
Second.